Hello everyone, my name is Youn and I'm from Michigan State University. The work I'm presenting was done with my collaborators Dima, Catherine, Song, and Hirin. Our paper investigates the existing assets of family caregivers, including their accumulated knowledge, strengths, and lessons learned during everyday caregiving tasks. Family caregivers have long been invisible actors in the healthcare studies, as the early studies focus either on patients or healthcare professionals. However, in more recent years, caregivers have been recognized as critical parts of the public healthcare system. For example, in high-risk treatments like bone marrow transplantations, caregivers often perform many activities on behalf of their patients. Because of the intensity and risk, caregivers played a vital role throughout the treatment. They assist in a patient's everyday self-maintenance activities, accompany him or her to healthcare appointments, and provide emotional support. It often provides significant decline in caregivers' physical and social functioning during the caregiving. Due to the challenges that caregivers face, previous studies have viewed them primarily as people who need continuous support from healthcare professionals, researchers, the public health system, and technologies. Similar to previous studies, we also found that the caregivers need support due to the challenges they face. However, more importantly, caregivers in our study showed how knowledgeable and capable they are through their caregiving experiences. In this work, we highlight the importance of caregivers' strengths and assets which they acquire while dealing with challenges they encountered in their everyday practices. All participants are 14 family caregivers of patients who had received bone marrow transplantation to treat various conditions, including cancer. We wanted caregivers to have active roles in the study. Therefore, we interviewed them in their home settings where they have more ownership. In these places, they could openly share their experiences, emotions, and views. We use a grounded theory with a constructivist approach for our data collection and analysis. The most common themes that emerged were the types of their knowledge rather than the types of their challenges. Although healthcare professionals have provided various strategies for caregivers, strategies developed by caregivers themselves were more helpful and effective. First, caregivers shared that they had established new mindset while they provided care. Our participant mentioned how the caregiving experience had influenced them to find new perspectives. During the caregiving experience, many caregivers were able to treat others the way they wanted to be treated themselves. As they confronted challenges, the caregivers learned generosity and tolerance that they had not considered before. Another way to establish a new mindset was to look at short-term plans and goals. Caregivers controlled negative thoughts that were associated with their work by focusing on current situation rather than looking at the long-term future. One caregiver referred to this practice as making it day by day. Just focusing on daily tasks helped them to stay positive and emphasize the sense of accomplishment. This mindset helped caregivers focus on factors that they could control and made it easier for them to cope with any negative situations. Second, caregivers gradually develop stress-relieving activities to refresh their minds and maintain wellness during their isolated caregiving activities. The most frequently mentioned activities were those that were easy to start and stop during the routines: creative work, shopping, small computer games, or just general relaxation. Many participants found that existing support groups provided by hospitals were not helpful because they were time-consuming for caregivers who already had many things on their shoulders. Many caregivers also expressed their desire to engage in small activities to improve their mindset. It was essential that any stress-relieving activities suggested to caregivers not require learning or acquiring new skills. Rather, they should be simple, quick, and familiar. Third, we identified how caregivers handled difficulties that occur from relationship challenges with patients. Caregivers needed their patients to comply with health requirements at all times. This caused tension and pre-diagnosis relationship changed dramatically. The most commonly mentioned way to alleviate tension involved the use of communication strategies. The caregiver then pointed out the importance of direct and candid communication about what was disliked. These open conversations enable the caregiver maintain her relationship with the patient regardless of the challenging experience. Other caregivers noted that spending time apart from the patients allowed them to vent feelings and maintain stable relationships. Through these experiences, they were able to learn the value of interpersonal relationships. First, caregivers reduced their feelings of uncertainty by sharing their experiences with people in their own network. To understand what was happening in a patient care, caregivers often relied on friends or relatives who had previously undergone similar experiences. In addition to alleviating their uncertainties by acquiring knowledge from their own network, caregivers used group-based communication channels to provide information to their friends and relatives who were also involved in the caregiving processes. Our participants relied strongly on themselves or the experiences of people in their network. Many caregivers had a list of family and friends with whom they wanted to share information. One caregiver's daughter wrote email updates to people who were in their close networks. From our main findings, we suggest an asset-based approach as a way to incorporate caregivers' devalued knowledge into technology design. Asset-based approach enabled researchers prioritize considering socially marginalized groups' existing knowledge, capacities, and stories. In our study, participants showed that a challenging experience offered them strengths and experiential knowledge of how to navigate situations. Like the knowledge-making process of any researcher, the long-term hands-on experiences of a topic can offer nuanced understanding of the issues as well as practical solutions. In that sense, caregivers are the domain experts of caregiving who have invaluable experiences that healthcare professionals or other researchers do not have. The two main themes commonly discussed in previous asset-based studies were naturally emerged in our study as well. One is to focus on the existing capacity of participants to avoid researchers' potential bias. Another is the importance of the existing social relationships which participants have built with their family or community. Experimenting with an asset-based approach within a caregiving context provides a chance to explore a practical reflexivity in broader socially marginalized communities. When compared to the groups of which CSCW and HCI scholars have used an asset-based approach, such as low SES or older adult populations, caregivers might be considered a less socially marginalized groups. However, caregivers are the population whose caring work and knowledge have long been undervalued. Applying an asset-based approach to caregiver studies will provide researchers an opportunity to speculate what has been qualified as legitimate knowledge based on their epistemic culture. In other words, an asset-based approach could enhance researchers' reflexivity by actively examining power dynamics between researchers and participants in knowledge-making processes. The knowledge of caregivers have long been devalued and invisible in healthcare studies as well as in broader society. Our study calls for attention to asset-based approach in caregiver studies and caregivers' role as an active knowledge makers. In our paper, we have included many more interesting findings that are supported by participant direct quotations. Please check. Thank you for listening.